Welcome to the ml-gradle Episode 2, Scaffolding New Projects from MarkLogic University. To follow along with this tutorial, you'll need to download and install MarkLogic. You must also have installed Java version 1.8 or higher, and the latest version of Gradle. The MarkLogic ml-gradle plugin will be downloaded and included when your project initially builds. Download the tutorial files and follow installation instructions in the tutorial README by going to github.com/marklogicuniversity/ml-gradle-series. In this video, you will learn about scaffolding a new MarkLogic application project with ml-gradle, using ml-gradle's build.gradle and gradle.properties files and their purposes, customizing MarkLogic resource settings, and how to tear down projects by undeploying them. Creating solutions with MarkLogic often involve multiple projects for front-end and middle-tier application, plus MarkLogic resources including databases, application servers, index settings, high availability configurations, and more. The ml-gradle plugin neatly fits MarkLogic project configurations into existing development environments and facilitates automating build and test procedures. Our demonstration displays a web page with a table and a column chart created with the Google Charts API. The table and chart shows Star Wars character names and their height, data stored in a MarkLogic database. The return data to the Google Charts API must be in a specific JSON format. We will need to create the following MarkLogic resources to accomplish this. We'll need a MarkLogic database to store the Star Wars character content. We'll also want indexes on the name and height properties that will supply our Google Charts table to make sure our searches are fast and scalable. We'll also need a MarkLogic module database for a REST extension script. The script will do the actual search for the character names and heights, then format the results in the required JSON format to return to the Google Charts API. The code to display the web application HTML will also be stored in our module database. To communicate with our database and to call a REST API extension URL, we'll need a MarkLogic HTTP application server listening on an available port. Other MarkLogic features, such as high availability and database backup schedules, could also be deployed with ml-gradle, but we won't be using these for our demonstration. Let's use Gradle and the ml-gradle plugin to get this project going. ml-gradle specific tasks and properties are added to Gradle by adding the ml-gradle ID to Gradle's build.gradle file. The ml-gradle plugin is pulled in from the Gradle community repository after you do your first Gradle project build. We've already created a project directory called Star Wars Project. In this directory, we created a build.gradle file to include the ml-gradle plugin. The ml-NewProject task creates configuration settings using values you supply via wizard. The ml-scaffold task creates configuration settings using default values. Using the ml-NewProject task, the wizard prompts if you'd like to create different environments. This creates property files for various environment configurations such as testing versus production settings. Of course, you could create configurations with default values with the ml-scaffold task, then edit the files accordingly. Since it's easy to use the ml-NewProject task, that's what we'll do for our project. The -i in the Gradle command provides some additional logging information and is optional. After changing to our Star Wars project directory, we run the command gradle space ml-NewProject. The build initially pauses and prompts for the name of the application. We'll type in Star Wars, for the application name. For the host to deploy to, we'll just press enter to accept the default of localhost. We'll use the name of admin for the administrator username. Substitute your admin username if yours is not admin. Enter the password for the admin username. For the REST API port, we'll use 8090, which is an open port on our local host computer. If this port is not open for you, enter another value that is available. For now, we'll not generate a test REST API application server. We'll just press enter with no value for the test REST API port. We can always create one later with an ml-gradle task. We do want to support multiple build environments, such as dev, prod, and QA, so press enter to accept the default of yes. We definitely want to create resource files for content and module databases, since this is a new project. We'll press enter to accept the default value of yes. The new ml-gradle properties, folder structure, and resource files are created. The ml-NewProject task creates subdirectories and property files containing our resource configurations. We will edit some of these before we deploy our demo Star Wars project. Note the various gradle-property files in addition to the main gradle.properties file. These represent property values we can use for our various build environments, such as our local admin username and MarkLogic hostname versus those values in production or in a QA environment. The default are the properties and values in the gradle.properties. We can easily change between the default and the other property files when ml-gradle tasks are called. To change the default configuration values, we'll check and adjust some of the ml-gradle properties. With Gradle, properties are commonly stored in a gradle.properties file that's in the project root directory along with build.gradle. So our gradle.properties file will be stored in our main project directory. Gradle projects can have subprojects simply by creating subdirectories within the main project directory. Within these subdirectories, other gradle.properties values can override the ones in the main directory. A use case might be for creating multiple application servers for the same content database. We'd want to at least override the application server name and the port on which it listens. Every property that ml-gradle looks for is prefixed with ml to avoid overlap with other Gradle plugins. We'll adjust the application name by changing the ml app name value from Star Wars to Star Wars-Gradle. We will also add two new properties to the gradle.properties file. The ml content database name will name our content database, and the ml modules database name will name our modules database. These values will be used by the resource JSON file, rest-api.json. The remaining values will do to begin our Star Wars project. One of the configuration files created by the ml-NewProject task is rest-api.json. This creates a REST application server for our Star Wars demo application. If not already created, the configuration will also create the database, module database, and appropriate force. The REST app server listens on the designated port. The %% in the configuration file denotes the value is actually a token representing a property value stored in the gradle.properties file. We can add or change default database options by configuring them in the content-database.json file. Additional indexes, forced merge policies, database backup schedules, failover, and other desired database settings can be customized and deployed. Our application will display Star Wars character names and their heights in Google Charts on a web page. To quickly access this data, we'll index these two fields, enabling us to return desired data directly from indexes. Secure access to these values is important. MarkLogic document permissions restrict not only access to document data, but also access to the indexed values. We can control who can access and update our content and also ensure that reading directly from indexes is also protected. In our Part 3 Customize folder, we'll verify our new index settings. In the directory Source, Main, ml-config, Databases, you'll see that we have added these index settings to the file content-database.json. Scaffolding our project with the ml-gradle task of ml-NewProject also created templates for users and roles. MarkLogic document permissions protect our content based upon roles and capabilities for those roles, such as read or update. It's important to consider who needs access to our content and who can write to our content database. For our Star Wars application, we'll create a set of users and roles. When we load our content, we'll apply permissions to the documents for those roles so that only those who have these roles can access our content. Roles are used with document permissions to protect our content. Users are assigned to roles so that our content in databases is protected and only accessible to authenticated users. Authentication can be done by MarkLogic or externally, such as through Active Directory. In our Star Wars application, we'll use user accounts in MarkLogic to control who can read our content, who can update our content, and who can access special REST API functionality, such as storing search options or executing extensions to the REST API. In the Part 3 Customized folder, the generated resource configurations for users and roles are in the subdirectories of roles and users under the ml-config directory. You can adjust these as needed. For our project, we'll use the default generated roles and users, so no changes are necessary. The roles are important since MarkLogic document permissions map to them. Users are assigned to one or more roles. The default user permission would be no access to anything. To create our MarkLogic resources on a MarkLogic server, we will use the ml-gradle's ml-Deploy task. The task uses our configurations and property values to create our needed MarkLogic application server, databases, and other resources such as security roles and users. In the second example, we are using a property called environment name to use a property file called gradle-dev.properties rather than the default gradle.properties. This uses property values unique to our dev environment versus our production or other environments. We can now deploy to various environments by simply changing how the ml-Deploy task is called. Resource configurations deployed can be removed by using the ml-Undeploy ml-gradle task. Because this is a destructive task, care must be taken. To ensure a catastrophic accident doesn't take place, the task requires a property -p confirm equal true to be set. Change to the Unit 3 customized, then Star Wars project directory. We then deploy the project by entering gradle space ml-deploy. After deploying, our resources have been created, including our application server and databases. In the administrative interface, examine the element range indexes for the Star Wars content database. Note the desired index for Star Wars character heights and names. We will use these indexes to extract these values and export them to Google Charts in the browser. In the admin interface, look at Security and then Roles. Scroll down the list of roles and note the desired roles for our project were successfully deployed. Finally, in the admin interface, click on Security and then Users. Note the 3 new users added as part of our project deployment. To ensure that we have a clean starting point for our next episode, we'll undeploy our configuration. Remember, this is a destructive operation which deletes our application server and databases. Use caution and remember to pass in the confirm equal true property. After changing to the project directory, we run the command gradle ml-undeploy -p confirm equal true. In episode 3, we will continue with our project and learn about deploying application code and content for our project. Learn more by visiting the ml-gradle GitHub site and the ml-gradle wiki at https://github.com/marklogic-community/ml-gradle. In this episode, you learned about scaffolding a new MarkLogic application project with ml-gradle, using ml-gradle's build.gradle and gradle.properties files and their purposes, customizing MarkLogic resource settings, how to tear down projects by undeploying them. To get MarkLogic, download from developer.marklogic.com. Get more training by visiting marklogic.com/training. Also, a complete selection of on-demand topics is available at mlu.marklogic.com/on-demand. Or download the MarkLogic mobile app available on both the Apple App Store and Google Play. And don't forget to show off what you've learned. Add MarkLogic as a skill on your LinkedIn profile today. Thank you for watching this MarkLogic University on-demand tutorial.